Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast at WorldatWork 2022. We have with us Marc McBrearty from Willis Towers Watson. Did I say it okay?
You did, David. Thank you very much.
Well, I
Thanks
care.
for having me.
I care. And we have with us our special guest, Kevin Plunkett, host of the Get It Right podcast.
Yeah, co-piloting again, David.
Oh, we love that. That's awesome. And so, Marc, one of the things we wanted to talk to you about today is the past, present, and future of surveys, because you work for Willis Towers Watson.
That's correct. I oversee North America surveys and software.
Outstanding. You know, there's one thing we do on the HR Data Labs podcast, which I think we've forgotten in the past, but we ask one fun thing that no one knows about you.
I am in the midst of becoming a TV producer of my own show called Guys Like Us. I've pitched it recently to the Food Network and the Food Channel. Got better traction with one than the other, so
That's awesome.
We're going back to what we call rewrites. But basically, it's a food cooking show where on game day Sundays in the NFL season, my friends and I will assemble around a sort of a kitchen bar, island kitchen, where I'll prepare food for the day. So okay. I don't want to give too much information because somebody will scoop me on it.
Okay, but one thing that you must tell me, Jets or Giants?
Oh, actually, New England Patriots, believe it or not. I'm originally from Boston.
Heartbroken.
He's a socks and Pats boy.
Wait, you're in New York now.
I live in New Jersey. I work in New York, but my heart will always be in Boston when it comes to sports.
He's one of ours.
Let's go Giants. That's all I'm saying.
Season ticket holder since 1978.
Well, I was a season ticket holder for the Rangers for
there you go.
13 seasons.
Oh, look at the year they had.
So as long as we can be guests on your show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're going to have to have us.
So when the Giants play the Cowboys, it'll be a nice brisket that we'll probably be preparing.
It's going to be a kosher brisket?
Absolutely.
That's the one thing I have to ask. Okay, good.
Low and slow is the only thing that's important.
That sounds good. So, Marc, our topic for today is surveys, past, present, and future. When we say surveys, we're talking about surveys that the HR professionals use for doing market pricing.
Traditional salary surveys.
Traditional salary surveys.
HR provided as opposed to crowdsourced.
Correct.
That's right. So let's talk about the past. Let's talk about the origin story of surveys. They've been around for a long time.
All 38 years of my career at Willis Towers Watson, beginning as an intern right out of Suffolk University.
Remember Eric Tanner?
I certainly do.
One of my best friends.
Eric and I worked together for quite a while.
One of my better friends.
At two firms. I worked with him at Watson Wyatt and also worked with him at Towers Watson.
Right. So let's talk about the past, though. I've been part of the survey organizations. I was part of the survey organization at Towers Perrin. I helped the survey organization at Aon Consulting when I worked there. Talk to us about the past. It's had a really wonderful history.
Welcome to The Human Role, your go-to podcast where HR and payroll collide with innovation. I'm your host, Tiana Neal, and every month I'm diving deep with industry experts and change makers, bringing you real talk insights, practical tips, and fresh takes you won't hear anywhere else. Whether you're a leader, practitioner, or just curious about the latest HR and payroll trends, I've got you covered. Ready to roll with the best? Tune in for fresh perspectives, actionable tips, and the knowledge you need to roll forward with confidence. Subscribe now and let's transform the way you work.
Well, the past was tedious, right? Everything was submitted manually.
Yep.
At best, you had a turnaround document that would report out what you reported previous years, and then you were asked to simply update the information, review the employee record, etc. At best, technology back then was, if you remember the old magnetic tapes.
Yes.
Banks used to use, for example, we used to get a report out on magnetic tape, load it on the machine, get a data dump in the old Wang PCs, and we would go record by record, get on the phone with clients, review the entire report, In some cases, a bank like Bank of Boston at that time, could be as many as 15,000 records. And you'd simply review all the anomalies that were pointed out by at that time, we had some pretty sophisticated algorithms for analyzing individual data. And then we would do the same on a macro basis. And then that would lead to the production of the report. And the whole process, start to finish, would take about 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
Nowadays, you can do a survey in 4 weeks.
Wow. From creation all the way through to
Not so much creation.
publication?
That may be a little aggressive, but certainly from launching to production. With API feeds and data feeds and all the HIRS systems that exist today, the process of submission is much more automated than it's ever been. And on top of that, incorporates a lot of the algorithms that we used to use internally. Proprietary algorithms are now much more commonplace in all software programs. So transcription errors and the things like that are much easily identified and solved actually before the submission process, so that it reduces the time we spend.
Well, the submission process itself is, I don't want to say it's a breeze, but it's much, much more simple and straightforward for clients, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, certainly the elements have become much more standard. What I define as base salary, you define as base salary, all of that has become much more common now. Yep. We typically are all using an April 1 effective date. There are some differences here and there, but the definition of LTI incentives, we're almost all using accounting value. We give you the flexibility to use other valuation methodologies if you wish, but for the most part, we're all trying to incorporate the same standards in our collection vehicles so that the client can really use one submission for all vendors.
But there's still some friction though in the process, right? In the participation process as a whole.
Yeah, but
some of that is it doesn't matter how great the software is going to be. There's a resource issue on the front end with the customer.
Exactly. If you heard my session this afternoon, or this morning, excuse me, it was exactly that there is resource constraints that really affect the process more than anything else. The compensation professional can only do so much, right? They can get the data, they can retrieve the actual compensation, but what they can't do is the matching. They certainly don't know every job in the organization. Right. They got to work with line managers, they've got to work with people, and so it really needs to be a process in which the entire organization buys into. And if they don't, you basically end up with garbage in and then, of course, garbage out.
But that's been the same for at least my career, 30 years of doing matching on the practitioner side as well as on the survey side.
I agree, but I think organizations are running much more lean and mean now, and I think so the allowance of an individual to have the time necessary to do that effectively has become challenged. It really has. And what we're seeing is that the process is being leveraged to the lowest point in the organization. Right. So it's typically an entry-level professional or an intern in some cases even. And, of course, they just don't know enough about the organization to do it well.
So if there are going to be – so obviously, the thought process was, geez, if we could only just have a direct feed out of the HRIS system or what have you, things will get easier. That hasn't necessarily then proven to be the case, because we're still stuck with the labor-intensive work around matching.
Absolutely.
And,
correct.
And looking at anomalies and just basically combing and looking through the data.
That's where I see big improvements coming in the next 3 to 5 years. Artificial intelligence, data science. I think, we even in our own methodologies now and our own tools are finding more and more success in actually pointing you in the right direction as far as matching goes, just based on a couple of keywords. Whether it's an attribute of the level of the individual, for example, whether it's a manager or an entry-level professional or an executive, whether it's in the, it might be in the financial discipline, but you're really looking at an accounting. So just in the way the reporting and accountant and the terminology that's used to describe the responsibilities and essential functions can really point you in the direction of a good match relatively quickly now.
But Mark, I think one of the problems that I think Kevin was highlighting as well is that the data that's there needs to be good data, and we know
absolutely.
that the HRIT data
Absolutely.
sucks. And there's no job description.
Right.
I hate to say it, but you get what you pay for.
Right,
So.
right.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody's ever gotten a free lunch in my world.
No.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Now, one of the things that we have been espousing to a lot of listeners on this podcast from the very beginning is HR needs to take a long, hard look at the data it has, especially in the job table, and be able to fix that. Fix function, fix family, fix job description, because people need to know what the hell they're being paid for. we don't know the job description, the employee doesn't know the job description, and therefore it's kind of unbounded. What am I doing? It's not based on what I was hired for, because I was hired like 10 years ago. Where's my job description?
So to that point, right, you do a lot in data analytics, data management, data governance. You've effectively been doing that for quite a while in around the data side. I'm going to throw this out there, since I don't have 30 years of experience in this area, but it seems like the importance in data, right, is becoming more and more apparent to those in HR than it ever has been in the past. And so that with all of this technology that's been created, all of this software, it's coming back to time and time again is, hey, if you don't have good data, none of this stuff is going to work. And it seems like that seems to be a message that seems to be resonating more strongly now with HR than it has in the past. Does that ring true?
Yeah, I think so. And I'll tell you, when you look back and you see that the last crisis that really affected compensation was the financial crisis back in 2008.
Yep.
Since that time, we've been experiencing what? 3% increases.
Right.
Right? You didn't even need to do a survey, right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
You just
and with no inflation, relatively no unemployment, you could basically, it was a 3% budget, and you didn't even have to conduct a survey to figure that out.
Right.
Now,
Because people could afford it.
all of a sudden we're at double-digit inflation, unemployment also at an unusual low in such inflationary times, is really got people up in arms because the talent is scarce to begin with,
yes.
and very much a seller's market. A seller's market. Anybody, I think my entire team is an example. I'm experiencing it just on my own in my own organization. It's difficult. I also think with social media platforms like LinkedIn and Indeed and the job market boards, et cetera, that there's been much more transparency in the availability of labor. So
Yes.
if you are looking, you don't need to go through advertising and recruiting and all of the steps that were necessary in the past. You can relatively find the replacement on your own in relatively a short period of time. Or at least a good profile candidate.
Quality replacement,
Right.
that's a different story.
Yeah, that's true. Well, exactly. That doesn't replace the effort needed. You're right.
And Mark, I'll agree with you, but I'll qualify my answer to Kevin's question a little bit differently. And I'll say, in data-driven organizations, data is more important. In organizations where other things are causing pain, data is not what's necessary. And therefore, those fields don't get filled in. Those fields get ignored. Those data sets get ignored. And only when something bad happens, like we need to do a pay equity audit, or we're losing too many people in this specific area, or we need to build pay transparency. Let's start doing market pricing. Well, we don't have any job descriptions. Oh, crap. Let's go back to the beginning and do job descriptions.
But the point
That's a very good point.
And the point I was trying to get to is, though, but at that same organization, they don't have that same problem in accounting. And they don't have that same problem in sales or within the manufacturing and operations. It's only HR. And
that they're lacking the data.
That they're lacking the
Yes.
data, or they're lacking the governance around data.
That's right.
And that has been traditionally acceptable. That's
Because
been
those
okay.
areas are driving profit and they're driving the business.
And my
Correct.
point, and
Yes.
that's my point. Now it seems like people are now because there is more visibility and there's more capability to have visibility and transparency into what's really going on in the organization, that there's more push to get data. But I still don't think the HR groups and the HR function as a whole is being resourced enough to really tackle that data on a meaningful
And I
basis.
think
Yeah.
part of that, too, is over the last 10 years, there's been little risk.
That's right.
And now there's a lot of
That's
risk.
right.
And so it's
Correct.
risk
That's right.
mitigation that really is causing and driving some of what we're seeing today.
And that's always a problem because that's a knee-jerk thing. It's not a a maintain and sustain kind of thing.
And here's what happens. Without that data, HR gets tossed to the side. HR gets minimized yet again because they're not bringing the data and the analytics and the needed skills to the party to be able to be sitting alongside the supply chain analytics, the sales analytics, the marketing and targeting analytics, and the beyond the supply chain, but the production analytics that are driving the business and they're driving profitability. And without that, and without HR having good survey data and as well the comfort and the confidence behind it to set context for the business, they're lost in that conversation.
Right.
And that's a phenomenon we've experienced in North America, U.S. and Canada specifically for a long time, right? Nobody relied on one data source. Right. Internationally, that has not been the case. Internationally, we find many a client that is heavily wedded to one particular organization, whether the data is good or not that good. In some countries or in some industries, all vendors are not necessarily 100%, in terms of the quality. And I do think that mindset is starting to change too, particularly with rapid inflation. If you look at South America as an example, or, technology roles in semiconductor roles, for example, in Asia Pac, the competition for data and for good data in Asia Pac around semiconductor manufacturing is unbelievable right now. Very, very hot. And, luckily Willis Towers Watson has a very good space in that particular industry, but not so much in other industries. And so that's always the challenge for us.
But
is finding the right data source.
Right. But triangulation is so important, and being able to give clients confidence that the data makes sense, and the lack of availability of those sources, as you mentioned, that's hurting us, isn't it?
It is.
It's hurting
absolutely.
the HR space.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a few players who have the breadth and depth in the industry as a Willis Towers Watson or a Mercer or even an Aon.
Right.
And I think, we're fortunate that, we have so much at our disposal when it comes to identifying trends and insights and where we're headed. We have a lot to be thankful for, and not so many organizations have that. So what do? They wing it, quite frankly. You find organizations doing crowdsourced surveys, trying to build very quick presence there, not worried about necessarily the quality of the methodology or whatever. Or whether it's self-serving or not.
So to that point, right, we are starting to see more and more data sources appear, right, that are AI, that are, scraped job data, that's aggregated, to some degree, right, the more of that appears, the more acceptable it becomes. But to your point, we start to run into quality issues again. This is back to my television sort of comment, right, where, because we now have more streaming services and we have more channels, we have more content, that means we can get great shows and be entertained all the time. No, yes and no. You have to still find the good shows to figure out what you want to be entertained by.
But also the world has changed, so the conversation around good is a very different conversation.
It's a relative term. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you bring up, Mark, a good source that Kevin's bringing up, even the crowdsourced data, it has context. So if it's providing context around something that's useful, fine. But you still need multiple other sources to be able to confirm, as well as be able to have some comfort that that's telling the appropriate story.
True.
Because without it, it could be crap, it could be good, you don't know.
As any comp practitioner would say, something's better than nothing. I hate to say that, but that is true.
No, I think that's
something's better than nothing.
I think that's the employee looking online to try and find a data source.
Where do I begin?
But the comp person, when their feet are held to the fire, they're not getting fired for using Willis Towers Watson data.
No, correct.
Right? And so if they were using, comp analyst market data, or they're using Willis Towers Watson data, they're not going to get fired for it because it's got validity.
Right.
But if
the process itself is defensible.
Right, it's defensible. You can go to your boss and show them how it works, and it's fine. But if you go to these other sources and it's crowdsourced data, you have to prove it that it's there. So you have to bring 3 or 4 other sources, or 2 or 3 other something to confirm it. You can't just have that.
Yeah, that's true. You find ABC Magazine doing a survey suddenly. First of all, they're not compensation experts, so they shouldn't be doing surveys to begin with. Secondly, they'll use maybe a university or a grad student or something to compile, which is fine. So statistically, maybe it's valid. But those surveys can tend to be self-serving, right? Yeah, the job descriptions are very cryptic. Accountant 1, and I'll have maybe 1 or 2 sentences at best. I hate to say this, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics promotes this kind of activity because they, too, don't really keep detailed occupational titles and descriptions, at least to the degree I think they should.
Sorry, are you saying ONET's not useful? It's been updated, hasn't it, in the last decade?
That was the parrot. That was the devil on my show. The angel would tell me it's spectacular. But
they were on a 5-year cycle, I think. Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's the problem, is that you question the validity of the intent when an individual, let's face it, if it's a magazine survey, a sponsored survey, and the individual is going to get the results of that, what do they want to do? They want to
get headlines.
They're self-service,
Right.
self-serving their own role.
But to David's point, though, and I know we're knocking the BLS, but the BLS does have. I mean, they do provide a good service, and their data actually does help with certain functions.
It's a good
certain
foundational
things.
resource.
It's a good
no
foundational resource.
It has validity on something.
Yes, I don't mean to throw it totally under the bus here,
No, of
but
course.
it's different than what we all provide.
And
right?
for a lot of smaller organizations, particularly on tight budgets, it's a great resource, to be
Absolutely.
quite frank.
And being
for their
able to
purpose.
triangulate an answer is where you should go. It's where you should be. Having one source is what we're trying to say is problematic and could get you in trouble.
Correct.
Right.
Therefore, if you can find those sources, and one of the things I wanted to ask you, Mark, is if those sources don't exist, wouldn't it behoove the survey organizations to incentivize other players in a market to be able to help solidify the hold of that market?
Sure.
Like encourage other people to build a survey?
I mean, listen, we can't be everything to everybody, right?
Right.
So you look at non-exempt roles in particular. Some of the best sources are state-run surveys or local boutique-run surveys because
Absolutely.
they are presenting the market that the national vendor can't produce.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, we take it down to MSA or CMSA level, particularly for non-exempt jobs. But even that's a little, you look at the tri-state area in New York City, the pay rate in New York City and Manhattan is
Varies.
considerably different than Northwest New Jersey,
Right.
Westchester County, et cetera. So,
Right.
I tend to,
Well, Staten Island versus Manhattan versus the Bronx versus Queens. It's all over the place, isn't it?
I do think that there is validity
Yeah.
in having, certainly a lot of validity in having multiple sources. I think that there is, in this particular market of the U.S., the need for all types of players, all vendors, whether it's a global, those that work on a global scale like a Mercer or Willis Towers Watson or Aon Radford or, some much smaller organizations that work, at a different level. There's a place for everybody, so long as you articulate your methodology and the steps you're taking to ensure high quality.
Right. The transparency is absolutely key. And I think that's a challenge with some of, I keep knocking these sort of the new AI or the new crowdsource, the new data sets. But I think the challenge is they're trying to grow. They're trying to be valid. They're trying to add as much content and data as they possibly can, but lack the transparency, I think, because they're generally afraid that, people are going to poke holes in it.
Well, and you can. But the problem is that if you really want statistical validity, you can poke holes in lots of different vendors, right? And lots of different survey sources. Ends aren't as high as they need to be in order to be able to drive statistical significance and be able to say with statistical certainty that this is the sample of the data set of the population and be able to say for sure that's how it's measured. I'm sorry, geeking out for a second, but we're doing the best we can. We can't force companies to participate in these things. We can't try and find new sources unless we incentivize participation.
Well, and quite frankly, I think not just incentivizing participation, but also incentivizing pricing, because that's another big barrier.
Of course.
Right. And so I think there's probably a couple of things we could do. One, make the stuff readily available so people know, hey, you like this industry? Well, these are the 15, 5 or 6 players that play in this industry, various different price points, package it together, and boom, you got 3 sources for a good price.
Sure. I'm going to say a word. I know your reaction to it. Interoperability. Matching once, being able to match to a common taxonomy.
Absolutely.
That then points to the matches at Willis Towers Watson surveys, Mercer surveys, Radford surveys, McLaughlin surveys, whatever it is. I've matched once, and I'm not talking about ONET. I'm not trying to be irascible and saying,
You're
we have
talking
to
about
get
the
to that.
Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, exactly. But that's possible.
Okay, Indiana Jones.
Possible. No question. It's very possible.
Through technology, it is possible.
Agreed.
Yes, no, it is. It is. This is not just an Indiana Jones fantasy. This is a real deal.
No, well, this is one of my fantasies, is being able to tell a client, but being able to tell a client, look, here are matches to this survey job, but here are the 3 survey jobs you could find in a Willis Towers Watson survey that will give you more statistically significant sample for a population you're looking to measure based on your industry, your locations. It has a higher N. or go to salary.com. Comp Analyst Market Data has a statistically significant sample here. But what you're doing is you're then incentivizing the behavior of using the group, and the group all succeeds with that.
Right. I mean, and this is what I mentioned earlier about the technology. I mean, that, our technology does this today. So we're not the only ones, by the way. But I mean, you guys do something similar within your system. Yep. And I think that's where we've seen some significant increases or significant value in the technology. But the market still lags, I think, to some degree in adoption.
Oh, so what you're talking about, though, is here are suggested matches based on your match, right?
No, I was just talking about like match once.
Okay.
And then
if we had the Rosetta Stone,
and you can match it once, and then the data can get populated, right? So there's a business model like job distribution in recruiting, right, where you push all of your postings into this one platform, and they sit and post it out to all the various job boards you go to.
Yeah,
sure.
We're at that stage today.
Well, that's wholesaling postings.
Different because you're that one distributor is only pushing stuff out to where you have existing relationships.
Oh, okay.
It's not wholesaling your jobs. It's you have to go out and have relationships with all the various different job boards.
So here's what keeps me up at night. In Denver, when you post a role, you also have to post the pay.
That's right.
New York City is considering adopting a similar statute.
That's right.
Coming in the next few months. Eric Adams has already endorsed it. I think it makes me nervous that it's going to happen sooner than later. When you think about it.
Should make you excited, I think.
Well, not really. And I'll tell you why. The more pay transparency, the less need for the independent third party like myself.
I disagree.
Completely disagree.
Really?
I think it forces companies to adopt them. That's more.
Because they need to know.
They have that validity.
Well, somebody, exactly.
You can't just go and, to other companies who are here.
But can't we all be that validity? I mean, we're all experts.
No.
Couldn't we all just develop our own technique?
But you can't.
What are you playing operator? They said it's $10 an hour, so I said it's $10 an hour.
Let's say you post a job in Colorado. You have to do that today, right? So you're in HR and you go, so where did you get these market prices from? Well, I looked at Indeed you
can't do that.
On the postings for Colorado, and it said this. Well, they have to be transparent, so they must be right? Tell me I'm going to have a job tomorrow.
No, but that's the point, Mark, is that we will need to have defensible data when we're brought in a court of law.
Yeah.
We'll have to be able to point to. I mean, look, if you do H-1 visas or H-1Bs, you've got to have not just you've got to have a page.
Trust me.
That is know this,
template.
yeah, right?
Right.
You have to have the page number. You have to have the survey source. You have to have the date of publication. You have to copy page 2 and you have the
And the funny thing is, the Department of Labor uses our data as the primary comparative source.
That's pretty funny.
We still have arguments with them over our data.
But they have their own data.
So when I was at Morgan Stanley, we used McLaughlin. We used the green binders, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody had the green binders on their shelf.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is, you will have to have that validity going forward. No one's going to abdicate their role to be able to say,
thanks,
I found
Dave.
it on.
You made my job security sound secure.
You got another 5 years. You got another 5 years, Mark. We just got you another 5 years.
Thank you.
This will go out next week. Mark, that check is in the mail, right? No, but seriously, right? We have to stand on real data.
I guess where I was going was the fact that anybody could provide, any knowledgeable practitioner with all of that data. If you think about every job listing and every transparent act being available to you, you could easily develop a compendium of resources that would either by industry or by job function or whatever it might be. You could develop a report of some kind or a data compendium that would give you the answers you need without having to participate. And that was where I was going, is that I see a day where I don't want to, because the biggest pain point in using data is supplying data, right?
Well, but then also, let's think about it, though. Yes, while you may, all right, so we'll use our hypothetical, looking up and using Indeed as a source. Your problem, though, is you're still lacking a taxonomy when you get down to it. And so what the job posting on Indeed says versus yours is probably different. And, the next level up may look different than that. And you're going to need that structure, in order to be able to
Right.
put that data together.
Correct.
And you're not going to find that from the job board.
And here's another thing. You've gone out and been transparent to everybody looking for a job.
Right.
But your current employees are also looking at that too. And they're saying, what does it mean for me? And they're not going to be satiated by go look at Indeed. You're going to have to publicly, in your intranet, publish the data, the ranges, and then explain to them how it works and why it's there and what your sources were and how valid they are and your process. You can't have things happen in a box anymore.
And I guess I'm coming around now as I think about it. What you want to pay an individual in a role isn't necessarily what you end up paying that individual.
That's also true.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's a
range.
lot.
That's right.
There's a lot of pressures on that one.
As I'm also learning this past couple of weeks.
As your employees are
As
coming in.
as I'm trying to hire a new business developer, for example.
Oh, yeah.
That are counter offers.
Not as easy as I once thought.
No. Not easy being a manager, is it?
All right, so Mark, put out your crystal ball. What does this business look like in 5 years?
I think what it looks like, if you could get clients, as I mentioned this in the session as well, it's a partnership between vendor and client. And to really work as a partnership, we both need to be accountable, right? We need to be accountable
That's right.
to take the information, clean it as best we can, and have it represent apples to apples when you go out and do market pricing, whether it be just to maintain your program or recruiting or whatever it might be. The client needs to do the same. And the client, if they do that, if they actually maintain their job matches throughout the year, not just 4 weeks before it's due to the vendor, but if they do that throughout the year and they're regularly feeding the compensation payroll, not having payroll data, but at least feeding in salary, incentive, all the elements that we collect into the HRS system, I can see a world where nobody has to do a thing. We just pull when we want and we push when we're finished. And so, technology really can serve as the conduit for real-time data in a much more cost-effective manner than any of us are finding a way to do so right now. It's far too expensive for us to work with clients and get real-time feeds and provide real-time output at a price point that they're willing to pay. And so that's why I don't think many of the vendors have really pushed it, because no one's really willing to pay for it. And I think when you get below the enterprise-type client, the global multinationals, Fortune 1000, let's say, it really is an expensive endeavor. And so what do we do with the mid-market organizations and some of the smaller type organizations? Yesterday's Microsoft that was founded in a garage is eventually going to be a 150,000 employee organization, perhaps. And so we have to be cognizant and work with those organizations as well. And, to me, that's my challenge. It's the enterprise client is rather, willing and has the tools at least to be able to meet the partnership that as we expected. I'm not so sure small organizations have that ability.
But to them, sometimes good enough is a year.
True.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
good enough is as long as I'm doing this on a yearly basis and it fits into my compensation management process, which I'm staffed for, which I have appropriate time for, which fits into the way in which my process is designed, it's all good. To the extent in which they need sooner and other things, they may have to supplement with other things.
And I wonder, when somebody says, I want real-time data, do they really want real-time data for their entire population? Or do they want real-time data for data scientists because that job is doubling in salary every 6 to 8 weeks because it's not really defined, right? Is it really the job, or is it skills that people are concerned about getting real-time data on?
I think it's,
I'm not sure.
but I also think it's the environment they're in.
Yes.
So
That's true too.
all right, real-time data scientists in, I don't know, Whitefish, Montana,
Right.
probably isn't seeing the same price increases as somebody in Redwood City, right?
Actually, I think it's the other way now because they're moving from Redwood to
That's true.
Because after the pandemic, they don't want
exactly.
to.
Yeah.
They
Cost of
don't want
living is
to.
too
They
high.
don't want the noise.
In fact, Redwood City's seeing the opposite, has gone down.
Yeah, exactly. but that's the point, though. They want to know what the trend is.
Right.
They want to know what the inflection points are and what direction things are moving. If they can get that information, then it helps them supplement and complement the insights that they already have, to be able to tell a manager, look, you might lose Kevin, but we might be able to find somebody because there are more people moving into our locations that are favorable to us, or we can find people around the U.S. or even around the world that can do what Kevin did. No offense, Kevin. I love you.
Oh, no, I know I'm 100% replaceable.
No, I'm just using it as an example.
We all are.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely are.
The minute you think it's like Survivor.
That's right.
The minute you think you're safe, you're out.
That's right.
The tribe has spoken.
The tribe has spoken, Mark.
Tribe has spoken, exactly.
But to that extent, as long as you tell them what's happening and can give them a more real-time view of the trends, does it need to be everything? No. But what's happening? Don't let me be surprised by 1,000 people leaving my organization like that. What's going on?
The cost of replacement would be staggering.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I do think that, it surprises me that a company like ADP, for example, with all the payroll data they have, hasn't put a front-end taxonomy in front of that. And really, when you think about it, they got more data points than anybody in the world, or a Workday, or any of these,
You're talking to the guy who built it.
I'm sorry?
I built it at ADP. But here's the thing, and you're right. And I'm not going to talk about the failings of ADP or I'll talk to you about some of the positives. ADP has tremendous trend data. They pay 1 in 6 people in the United States, and on an overall basis, I can see how 38 million people are paid.
Right.
And the trends from a location perspective and on an overall basis.
Mobility.
But if I say to you with a straight face that I would suggest to ADP clients that they just use ADP as a compensation source, I would never.
No.
I always tell them to triangulate.
Right.
Not because there's anything wrong with the ADP data necessarily, but because the same thing is true of most sources. You want to triangulate to make sure that you're making the right decisions, right?
That's a good point. Eric and I were working with Equifax years ago.
Yeah.
On a similar model to what we guys developed over at ADP.
Fascinating data too.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Exactly. I mean, more data than the power of the data is what it boils down to.
Here's the problem.
These organizations got a ton of it and just don't know what they're sitting on.
Yeah.
I would argue they do know what they're sitting on. They just don't know how to organize it. They don't have a way to characterize it, put it in a usable, digestible fashion.
Exactly.
The other thing is, who are their audiences? Who's buying from them? One of the things that you have to find is, and with Equifax, they actually have human capital management people they've hired.
Right.
So they're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'd say that might be a source to look out for if I'm a competitor. But the question is, what are you known for? ADP is known for payroll.
Right.
No compensation person will go to ADP and say, oh, ADP, you've got all this data. Let me see what you can do. Usually it's the HR people and the payroll people who go to the comp people and say, this is what's there. And the comp people go, it's a data point. And that's why I was saying before, you triangulate from there. Just like Equifax. If Equifax actually comes out with a product that can be used by compensation, first of all, we would have seen them here.
Right.
But second of all, they would say something about why am I
they
different?
are here, but for a different purpose.
Okay, and so when they do come here and start touting compensation market data, then we'll talk to them about, tell us what context it sets and what value it adds. And that's the thing.
Right.
And then we can talk about how all this stuff comes together in something like Comp Analyst, and how do you triangulate and make the right composite.
Yep.
So, Mark, any other predictions or anything else you want to end up on?
Oh, my gosh.
All right.
Are the Red Sox ever going to win another World Series?
I was just about to ask you, is it going to be this year,
Not before
Mark?
the Mets.
Is it going to be this year?
Mets, come on. You got the pitching staff.
So you know how
Mets.
Jordan's Furniture does this? You know, you buy all your furniture.
But they have to sweep the World Series.
The World Series this year.
Not going to happen.
So I just bought a new mattress, Mark. Am I going to have to pay for it in
I think
October?
you better keep making those installments. Sorry to say. This
You
will not
heard
be
that
our
on
year.
the HR Data Labs podcast.
It pains
Sorry,
me as a
Mr.
season
Jordan.
ticket holder to say that.
Wow. Mark, thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
See, that
My
wasn't
pleasure.
so painful.
That was very good. I
Kevin,
enjoyed it,
thank you
actually.
for being a part of it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
And thank you all for listening. Take care. Stay safe.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.